जय राधा माधवा कुंज बिहारी जय गोपी जनवल्लभा गिरिवरधारी जय गोपी जनवल्लभा गिरिवरधारी यशोदानंदन ब्रज जनार्दन यशोदानंदन ब्रज जनार्दन जमुना तेरा वनचारी यमुना तेरा वनचारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे जय प्रभु पदा जय प्रभु पदा प्रभु पदा जय प्रभु पदा जय गुरुदेवा जय गुरुदेवा गुरुदेवा जय गुरुदेवा निताय गौर हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल निताय गौर हरि बोल। जय श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय जय पतित पावन गुरु महाराज की जय जय गौर प्रेमानंदे। So Hare Krishna. Before I begin, I would like to seek all your prayers and also the blessings of His Grace Mathrapati Prabhuji. And also I would like to thank Mathrapati Prabhuji for giving me this opportunity of taking Srimad Bhagavatam, all auspicious Srimad Bhagavatam class early in the morning. And what best it can be, apart from speaking the glories of the Lord, and also what best it could be apart from hearing the glories of the Lord. So I think thank you, Prabhuji, for putting me into this schedule, which helps me a lot. So today's shloka is Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, chapter number 8, shloka number 51. Let me share my screen. ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय नारायणं नमस्कृत्यं नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत् नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तमा श्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्ठिकी. So we will recite the shloka. One of you can be my chorus.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, chapter number 8, shlok number 51. The name of the chapter is give me a second. Okay, we are talking about chapter number 8, which is canto 1.
Yes, Vinkwati Prabhu.
Yes, thank you, Prabhu. स्त्रीणां मद्धात बन्धूनां
स्त्रीणां मद्धात बन्धूनां
द्रोहो योऽसाव इहोतिथा
द्रोहो योऽसाव इहोत्थितः कर्मभिर्गृहमेभिर्
नाहं कल्पो व्यपोहितम्.
नाहं कल्पो व्यपोहितम्.
Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you,
Now
sir.
we shall read word by word meaning. Strinam, of the woman, mat by me, hat bandhunam, of the friends who are killed, droha, enmity, yah, that, asau, all those, iha, herewith, uttitaha, has accrued, karma bher, by dint of work, grahamedir, by persons engaged in material welfare, na, never, aham, I, kalpa, can expect, vyapohitam, undoing the same. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace. ऐसी भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय. I have killed many friends of women, and I have thus caused enmity to such an extent that it is not possible to undo it by material welfare work. Purport: the Graha Medis are those whose only business is to perform welfare work for the sake of material prosperity. Such material prosperity is sometimes hampered by sinful activities, for the materialist is sure to commit sins, even unintentionally, in the course of discharging material duties. To get relief from such sinful reactions, the Vedas prescribe several kinds of sacrifices. It is said in the Vedas that by performing the Ashwamedha Yagna, horse sacrifice, one can get relief from even Brahmahatya, killing of a Brahmana. Yudhishthir Maharaj performed this Ashwamedha Yagna, but he thinks that even by performing such yagnas, it is not possible to get relief from great sins committed. In war, either the husband or the brother or even the father or sons go to fight. And when they are killed, a fresh enmity is created. And thus, a chain of action and reaction increases, which is not possible to be counteracted even by thousands of Ashwamedha Yagnas. The way of work, karma, is like that. It creates one action after it creates one action and another reaction simultaneously, and thus increases the chain of material activities, binding the performer in the material bondage. In the Bhagavad Gita 9.27 and 28, the remedy is suggested that such actions and reactions of path of work can be checked only when work is done on behalf of the Supreme Lord. The battle of Kurukshetra was actually fought by the will of the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna, as it is evident from his version, and only by his will was Yudhishthira placed on the throne of Hastinapura. Therefore, factually, no sins whatsoever touched the Pandavas, who were only the order carriers of the Lord. For those who declare war out of personal interest, the whole responsibility lies on them. ओम अज्ञानतिमिरन्दस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनाशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः. श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपकदामयं ददाति स्वापदान्तिकं. वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरु श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरुं वैष्णवंश श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगण रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादान् सहगण ललिता श्री विशाखामितांश्च. हे कृष्णा करुणा सिंधु दीन बंधु जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कांता श्री राधा कांता नमस्तुते. तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिय वाञ्छा कल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः. जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधरा शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद. हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे. मुखं करोति वाचालं पंगुं लंघयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुदीनतारणं परमानन्दमाधवं श्रीचैतन्य ईश्वरम्. हरे कृष्णा. So as we progress in this chapter, we see, the mind of Yudhishthir Maharaj is revealed. We get to know how compassionate is Yudhishthir Maharaj, and that is how we see in this shloka. He is thinking a lot. He is thinking from different perspectives. And that is the responsibility of a devotee. A devotee should think from all the perspective. Sometimes we may take a wrong decision thinking, only a particular aspect. But when we think from different aspects, we realize, okay, I think it was my mistake and the other person was correct. So that is how we see here Yudhishthira Maharaj is thinking from all the perspective. And also if we see in the beginning, when the Bhagavad Gita was spoken, in the beginning of the war, we see Arjuna was also in this dilemma. He was also thinking from different perspective and was presenting different reasons not to fight this war. And he explained various things. But here we see same thing, something which is common between Yudhishthira Maharaj and also between Arjuna. And the common thing is that both of them are thinking from this point of view that, whether they have committed any mistakes, and they want to see clarifications and everything. And they are surrendering to the Supreme Lord to get more clarity of their actions. So that is something very beautiful, which is coming up in the ideal characters of Pandavas. And then when we see further here, when we talk about Yudhishthir Maharaj, so one thing which is common between Yudhishthir Maharaj and Arjuna, one more thing which is common is both of them are actually the order carriers of the Lord. So when somebody becomes the order carrier of the Lord, then there is no sin accumulated. It is not a sinful activity. It is the work which is given by the Lord. So here we see Yudhishthir was confused, and he was also, thinking that, so many people have killed. Like, a few days back, Matrapati Prabhuji had posted a message about the size of the army. How big is the size of one Akshorani Sena, I think. So there were several, groups were there like that, who were killed, who were massacred, and many people, the elders were killed, the men were killed. There were so many widows who were created, and that was disturbing the mind of Yudhishthir Maharaj. So yesterday in the Srimad Bhagavatam class, Achintya Prabhuji was mentioning some examples of how we get overwhelmed at times when we do not anticipate the situation properly, or when we don't see the situation in its true nature. Prabhuji was giving the example of when somebody is seeing the tall buildings, standing on the ground floor and seeing the tall buildings, they get overwhelmed. How is such a big building created? Such a great skyscrapers are created. Like if somebody goes near Burj Khalifa, they will think, oh, such a big building, how is it created? But the next example Prabhuji gave was when we are flying in the airplane, the same buildings appears to be very small. And that time we are not overwhelmed. We are not worried about, how big is the building. So it depends upon our perception when we develop based on the situation. The real situation is that we are all part and parcel of the Lord, and our real nature is to serve the Supreme Lord. The real thing is that we will get happiness only when we engage in the service of the Lord, and that is the guidance, that is the verdict of Bhagavad Gita. When Krishna is speaking Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna in 5th chapter 29 shloka, Krishna is saying, Bhoktaram Yagna Tapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram. Krishna is saying, I am the Bhokta of everything. When we realize this, okay, Krishna is the Bhokta and we have to do everything for the pleasure of the Lord, then there is no confusion, then there is no, feeling sorrow, then there is no sadness about anything, then there is no regret, because we understand that we are working for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is our real nature. But every moment, every time, every second, we are disturbed by the activities and the creations and various things which we come across in the material world. Like when we go to office, we see several billboards on the road. We hear people talking about a movie or talking about some sport, and it starts affecting our consciousness. We try to, we have to get involved into those things. We have to hear all such things because we are part of the material world. And then when we go office, we have to meet so many people, we have to come across so many challenges. Sometimes we are praised so much, so we are also supposed to keep ourselves very, humble. We need to learn to keep ourselves humble. So Krishna gives various ways to you know to make us practice in different situations, so that we are well, we have practiced enough and we are ready for the final exam. So both Mayadevi and Krishna works together in such a manner that they keep giving a lot of practice to the devotee. So like Arjuna and Yudhishthira Maharaj, and also like Bhimsen, we also keep getting a lot of confusions. But the remedy is that if we always absorb ourselves in Krishna consciousness, then this so-called creation, so-called disturbance will not affect us. I'll also give one more example. When Dhruv Maharaj, when he engaged in a war after he performed tapasya and he had become the king, so he had to engage in a war with Gandharvas. And that point of time, they created such an illusion. There was a rain which of blood. There were so many arrows which were shot at him. There were a big army. So it was all illusions which was created by the opposite army, and all that illusion was diminished by Dhruv Maharaj. So like that, we also have so many illusions which gets created. We get carried away by different situations. Sometimes we get emotional, sometimes we become angry, And these are all things, all the things we encountered when we are not completely absorbed in Krishna consciousness. But when we are absorbed in Krishna consciousness, then there is no sorrow. Like yesterday, Prabhuji was mentioning about one of the acharyas example, who said there is always ananda and there is nothing. There is nowhere sorrow from the time the acharya was in bhakti, in devotional service. And even Guru Maharaj says that anande sima nahi. He says there is no limit for the joy, for the anand. Even though the Guru Maharaj is having such conditions, but still he says anande sima nahi, which means there is no limits for the joy. So that is the real Krishna consciousness. And if we engage in such Krishna consciousness, then we do not get into sorrow, into so-called difficulties, so-called emotional anger, this, that, and all doesn't come to us. So I'll come to this point towards the end of the class, where I will talk about how we can retain or how we can develop in such consciousness. So next point I wanted to mention, I was hearing a lecture of Guru Maharaj where Guru Maharaj was talking about 5 unavoidable sins. So if you see here, Yudhishthir is worried because he's thinking that he has committed so many sins, many people are killed. And in order to overcome such sins, they were doing Ashwamedh Yagna. And Ashwamedh Yagna, some sacrifice is required in order to overcome the sinful activities which somebody has done accidentally. So Yudhishthir is worried, but do you know, we also commit a lot of sins, even though we follow 4 regulative principles very diligently and chant Hare Krishna Maha Mantra minimum 16 rounds daily and follow Ekadashi. But still we also commit a lot of sins. So Guru Maharaj was mentioning these points, and everybody was surprised to hear that what are those sins which we also commit. Because see, when we commit sins, then we can never progress in Krishna consciousness. That is for sure. And especially these 4 regulative principles, if any one is also breached, then we can never progress in Krishna consciousness. It is like you are filling a bucket which has got several holes. That bucket will never be filled with water. So we need to always try that, the bucket's holes are closed, and then we keep filling, the water. So then the water will be full, and then we can absorb ourselves in Krishna consciousness. So Guru Maharaj mentioned the first point. He said, there are many times when we are walking on the ground and a lot of living entities are there on the ground, very small, tiny, which we do not see, and we accidentally stamp on them. Correct? I'm sure you agree with this point. And even though we do not know, we keep walking. How much conscious can we be? It is something which is unavoidable sins. That is what Guru Maharaj says. And these sins happen. So even if we try to avoid, it is not possible, because we cannot figure out every minute living entity. We cannot be like Jad Bharat. So Jad Bharat had a very nice, this particular chapter was very nice, where Jad Bharat is instructing King Rahugana, and before instructions, King Rahugana's, the, what do you call it, the palaki was going on. And that point of time, there was one person who was not able to, lift the palaki. So that point of time, there was Jad Bharat who was available, and they called Jad Bharat because he had a very good body and quite strong and strength. So they said, okay, Jad, okay, you come here and help us with the palaki, because it is king's palaki. Jad Bharat comes there, and when he is moving with the palaki, the palaki is moving here and there. The king becomes very upset. The king Rahugana becomes very upset, and he is scolding from inside. Who is this? Do you not know how to carry the palaki? So all these other kahars, they will say, my dear Lord, this one person whom we have hired, he is walking in such a manner that this palaki is shaking. And then this king, Rahugana, he will abuse Jad Bharat by various bad words, and telling him that you do not know how to walk when you are carrying a king, and you will be given a death punishment because of that. And then that point of time, Jad Bharat gives a very nice instructions, and that forms an entire chapter in Srimad Bhagavatam, I think 5th canto. Entire chapter is there about the instructions of Jad Bharat to King Rahugana. So the point was how the palaki was shaking. The reason why palaki was shaking was because Jad Bharat, when he was moving, he was seeing a lot of ants on the ground and other living entities, and he didn't want to stamp on them. Remember, Jad Bharat was King Bharat in his previous life, and then he became the deer Bharat, the deer. And then his third birth was, as a human being, where he was called Jad Bharat. Jad means who doesn't have any, he was not taking interest in anything. He was only showing as a dumb man because he didn't want to take a chance this time. This was the third opportunity for King Bharat. But we might not get such opportunities like King Bharat, wherein we take 1, 2, or 3 birth and we can understand that, okay, in my previous birth, I was staying near Shri Gandharvika Girdhari temple. And then I used to have darshan of Lakshmi Narasimhadev and Bhaktavatsal Balaji. And I could not make, success in my Krishna consciousness. So I became some animal. And then third body is again the human body. See, that might not be the situation which may be available to us. But yes, by hearing all these pastimes, we can develop such what do you call it, conviction, that we do not take such birth again and again. So Jad Bharat was walking like that, to ensure that the living entities are not killed. So many times when we walk on the ground, we may commit this unavoidable sin. Even Guru Maharaj example is there. I was hearing in one of the JSSS meeting. So the Prabhuji was mentioning that Guru Maharaj was he's very tall. He's very tall, and all other devotees, when they stand next to Guru Maharaj, they appear like small babies, like few days back when Leela Purushottam Prabhu had come to Bangalore, and myself and Matrapati Prabhu, we took the pictures along standing next to Leela Purushottam Prabhu. So we were looking very small. So so that is what happens when somebody stands next to Guru Maharaj. He is very tall and he is very broad. So that time other devotees will appear like babies. So when Guru Maharaj was doing chanting in the early morning and he was walking, so when Guru Maharaj was walking, so he was taking very, very long steps. So other devotees, if they had to cope up with Guru Maharaj, they had to run along with Guru Maharaj. He was so tall. So while walking Guru Maharaj, he saw there are a lot of devotees following him, and Guru Maharaj suddenly stopped and he changed his way. So the other devotees got puzzled that why did Guru Maharaj change his way? So Guru Maharaj explained that in that side when I was going, I saw there are a lot of ants who are crossing the street, and when we all go through that, all these ants will be killed. So that is how conscious was Guru Maharaj, and he changed his entire route in order to safeguard all these living entities. So you see, many times we may come across these things. And even if you see the Jain sadhus, when they are walking, there are people who are brooming the streets, and they are trying to avoid, killing such living entities. So these are certain examples I wanted to quote here to mention that many times we commit such sins which are unavoidable. So that was number one. So in the similar manner, we sometimes when we are driving, we of course we do not know which living entities on the ground, and we may crush many jivas. So that is also one of the example that this can be an unavoidable sin. So the third sin can be when we set fire. So it happens especially in North India when it is winter. So we have to bring a lot of wood together, and we need to light them in order to ensure that there is not much cold. And in that process, there are times when there are so many termites or other insects which are spiders, etc., which are residing inside those the dried woods, dried piece of woods. So when you set fire, they suddenly come out, and many are killed even if you try to save them. Like when I was in North India, so when during the japa session, when I was joining, especially at this point of time during December and January, it was very cold. So we had to always burn a lot of wood next to us, and only then you can sit there because it is extreme cold. So when we do this, a lot of times, so many living entities are killed, very small, tiny, which we do not even know. So even though we are devotees, so these killings are happening. And remember, these killings can have, impact on our Krishna consciousness also. Now the question is, how can we safeguard ourselves? So this was the second number, third point where the many living entities are killed without our notice. Fourth one, Guru Maharaj was saying, when we breathe, so there are many microbes which are killed, because when they are so tiny in one thumb like this, if I show, there are several thousands of living entities which can be present here on my thumb itself. So when we are breathing, so just imagine how many living entities are getting consumed by us and are getting killed. And then the next one, Guru Maharaj also gives the example of the Jain sadhus who put a a kind of something which they put in the mouth in order to avoid. But it is again not possible to completely get rid of that. And when we drink water, so a lot of microbes are killed. And Guru Maharaj was giving example of Ganges water. He said in Ganges people dump a lot of things, and that is how the water of Ganges, if we take the sample, it has got 60,000 microorganisms present in it. But also Guru Maharaj said the water is so pure, it has got such a quality, the river Ganges water, that it purifies itself, and within the span of 5 to 7 days, the entire microorganisms are killed. The water is safe. So the point is, how do we overcome such sins? Because Yudhishthir was worried because he has done so many killings. He was part of the thing where so many killings have taken place. So he was worried. So how can we be safe from all this? And then Guru Maharaj says that we do not have to do Ashwamedh Yagna at this point of time. What do you think? If we do Ashwamedh Yagna, will it be fine? Do we have any ashwas available? And do we have any priest available who can do the Ashwamedh Yagna at this point of time? I'm sure the answer is no. We do not have such priest who can do Ashwamedh Yagna. And the horse is sacrificed, and immediately the horse gets a new body, a human body. It is not possible. So that is how all these sacrifices which are taking place in various religion and things like that, they think that they are following the right process, and by doing this sacrifice they are pleasing the Lord. But actually they are not pleasing the Lord, because this is the age of Kali, and Kali Yuga is not for this kind of sacrifice. So that is how, when we read Srimad Bhagavatam, when we read Bhagavad Gita, we understand the Yuga Dharma. The Yuga Dharma of in this age is the congregational chanting of the holy name of the Lord, and which is more powerful than Ashwamedh Yagna or any type of yagnas which is available. If you see, in the age of Satyuga, people were very pious, very, very pious people. There were hardly any thieves, and there were houses without doors. We cannot imagine such situation now. If we build a house without a door, forget the door. Nowadays we have to install a lot of CCTV cameras. Otherwise the house is not safe. So that point of time in Satyuga, there were no doors in the houses, and everything was so good. And to self-realize, the process of self-realization was very difficult in that point of time, in the Satyuga. 60,000 years of tapasya, 10,000 years of tapasya, thousands years of tapasya, and still failing in the tapasya and redoing tapasya. We have the examples of Vishwamitra failing the tapasya because of his anger, and because of he getting attracted to Menaka, and several examples are there. So in Satyuga, it was very difficult. Even the age was very good, but it was very difficult. Then the next yuga was Treta Yuga. Treta Yuga, it became little more comfortable, where the sacrifices were given prominence. But again, it was not so easy to invite Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, Prajapatis, everybody to take part in yagna. It was not so easy. It was still difficult. And then giving so much in charity, so much of ghee, so much of cows, so much of charity was given, loads and loads of gold was given in charity. So it was slight easy, but it was still difficult. Then came the age of Dwapar Yuga. Dwapar Yuga, the Yuga Dharma was to do the elaborate deity worship. So it was a little easy, but again 9 and 10 hours of deity worship was something which was still little difficult. But then came Kali Yuga. So Kali Yuga is the age of quarrel and hypocrisy. There are so many problems. We are always fighting with our own mind. But there is one very good quality in the age of Kali, and that good quality is, by chanting the holy name of the Lord, you get the benefits equivalent to the people who were doing the tapasya in the Satyuga, yagna in the Treta Yuga, and elaborate deity worship in the Dwapar Yuga. You get all such benefits just by chanting the holy name of the Lord attentively without any offenses. And this is how this is the actual sacrifice in this age of Kali. If you want to get rid of these 5 kinds of unavoidable sins, which I had just listed out, which Guru Maharaj was mentioning in his class, so we can get rid of all that just by attentively chanting the holy name of the Lord. And that is how it is very important for every individual to chant the holy name of the Lord. Many people, they say, I'm very pious, I don't hurt anybody, I will do good to everybody, I will not be harmful, I will not harm anybody, but I will not chant. So if they say they do not chant, you can explain it to them that it is a yug dharma, number one. Second thing is, if you do not chant, even though you are very good people, you are a murderer, you are killing so many living entities without your notice. And if you want to safeguard yourself, so you have to chant the holy name of the Lord. There is no other way. Guru Maharaj says, there is no other way, no other way, no other way. And wonderful shloka is also there in Brihanaradi Puran. The shloka is Hare Nam, Hare Nam, Hare Nam Eva Kevalam Kalav Nasti Eva Nasti Eva Nasti Eva Gatir Anyatha. There is no other way. So this is how we should chant properly, and we in this way we can overcome the difficulties or the sins which we accumulate. Remember, these sins are our main reason for our taking birth time and again in this material world. And if you want to wind up this business, we have to, number one, we have to stop doing the sinful activities. We have to, at any cost, follow the four regulative principles without cheating ourselves, because this human life we will not get again. And the second thing is, we have to attentively chant the holy name of the Lord along with the devotees, so that with the humble nature we can chant, and we can remove all the sins which are accidentally created by us, and which are still being created. And when we chant attentively, then our tendency to do the pap karma is also removed from our heart. The ichha is removed from the heart. Then when the ichha is removed, then we will never, the desire itself is removed, then we are never going to commit the sinful activities. So yesterday Achintya Prabhuji was mentioning that we need to take the shelter of Bhagavatam to absorb so much in Krishna consciousness that you will not feel any disturbances. But then he also mentioned very nice points. He said it is not very easy to get absorbed in Krishna consciousness just by hearing. To attentively hear, we need to follow a process. And the first process, he said, the first step would be that these four regulative principles we need to follow. And he said, Ahara Nidra Bhai Maitram needs to be purified. Eating, we should be very, very careful in what we are eating. Nowadays the cholesterol levels are high. So at least now people can stop eating, fried food, or, food which is very tasty, or, something which is very um, just for that sake of tongue. So we need to monitor our eating habits. We need to monitor our sleeping habits. We need to, of course, monitor our mating habits, our physical relationship with our counterpart. And then defending means how much you are trying to acquire and keep with you. It is mentioned that if you accumulate a lot of money, then that money is going to be cause of disturbance for you. So it is always good to retain something for emergency and engage everything in the service of the Lord. So these are the first the primary steps which we need to take. And then when we are doing these primary steps properly, then our actions are going to be pure. So remember, first step is Ahara Nidra Bhai Maitranam. These things needs to be purified. And it requires a lot of energy when we want to purify ourselves. Of course, our eating is immediately regulated when we have taken initiation, or when we are chanting the holy name of the Lord, and or when we are at the level of shelter, etc. So our eating is regulated. We do not consume anything which is with onion and garlic. We do not consume anything outside. We offer everything to the Lord, and then we consume those eatables. So our eating is purified. But we need to be careful in our eating, because many times such situations occur where we need to take something where it may not be offered. So we have to always mentally offer and consume. So never forget Krishna when we are consuming. So eating is one thing. Sleeping, minimum 6 hours of sleep, and sleeping at the right time and waking up at the right time. You know this better. And then physical relationship. Again, it is very, very risky. We may follow this diligently, but sometimes in our mind we may think something which is very corrupt. So in the age of Kali, the risk is that when we think something, in our mind, it is as good as doing that. So there are a lot of benefits, but there are a lot of risk also. Yeah, you would have heard about, the trading in the high risk market. So this is something, the Kali Yuga is trading in the high risk market. It can give you a lot of benefits, if you attentively chant the holy name of the Lord. But at the same time, if you are not careful with our mind, then there can be a great fall down. Like Radhana Swami Maharaj Ji, he explains in his lectures, he says that mind is like a wild animal. And if you have captured your mind also, when you're trying to capture, then you need to be super careful. But if you have captured your mind by attentively chanting and following regulatory principles, taking association of the Vaishnavas, even if you have captured your mind and your mind is in your control, you need to be extra careful with your mind, because it is like a wild animal, and it can, the moment we are not careful about it, it can immediately devour us, it can put us in trouble. So that is how we need to be careful in our thinking, in our mind. What am I thinking? Always there should be a checkpoint. And defending, I have spoken about it. So that is the primary steps. The second step is our actions will become pure when we do these four things. Third step is when our actions are pure, then only our mind is going to become pure. And when our mind is becoming pure, then we can hear Shrimad Bhagavatam. Otherwise, we cannot hear Shrimad Bhagavatam. You would have seen many people who try to hear Shrimad Bhagavatam, they are sleepy, or they are thinking something else, or they are not, they are doing something else. They are not bothered about what is being spoken. So remember, that is possible only if our mind is pure, and mind is going to be pure if only our actions are pure, and our actions are going to be pure if we are following this ahar, nidra, bhaya, maitram, if this is purified. And when this thing is happening, then we are able to hear Shrimad Bhagavatam. And Shrimad Bhagavatam is Amal Puran. When you are reading Shrimad Bhagavatam, it is said, Nityam Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Those who are hearing Shrimad Bhagavatam on a daily basis, then all the Abhadreshu will be running away. All the piousness will come to you, and all these the calamities which are there, disturbances which are there, they are going to run away from us. So these are the points I wanted to mention, which I accumulated from yesterday's class of Achinte Prabhu and Guru Maharaj lecture. And somewhat it was in line with what is the topic today. So I just presented those points. I hope it is helpful. And if I have committed any mistakes or anything, if I have said which is incorrect, so please correct me. And I also seek your forgiveness for any mistakes. I would like to give a pause here. If you have any questions or clarifications, you are welcome. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Patita Pavan Guru Maharaj ki jai, Hare Krishna.